So welcome everyone. My name is Angel Dominguez and I am the Director for Ghana's Graduate Pathways here at the Hispanic-Serving Initiative Institute of UC Santa Cruz. And it is my great honor and pleasure to get to introduce our winter quarter HSI Equity Talk esteemed guest, beloved colleague, Lydia Iyeczohua Zendejas. Um, Dr. Zendejas, I should really emphasize here. And I do have a bio to read, but before that, I do just want to share that I have had the great pleasure and honor of getting to work with Lydia over the years as a part of the HSI team. And in that time, I have come to know Dr. Zendejas as one of the most committed, walk the walk, efficient, caring and compassionate higher education practitioners that I've encountered personally in my last 10 years of working at UC Santa Cruz. And it is truly a privilege to get to work with someone who cares so much and backs up that care with real, rigorous, data-centered, if you know Dr. Zendejas, it is data-centered decision making and work. And I do say that from the bottom of my heart. It is rare to get to encounter someone with whom you are so resonant in so many things, both culturally, professionally, personally, and it is truly a joy to get to introduce Dr. Zendejas to you all today. So with that, I will read the bio that has been provided to me. And Dr. Zendejas is a sharp, purpose-driven higher education professional with a doctorate in educational leadership. Dr. Zendejas is passionate about equity in higher education, especially at Hispanic-serving institutions, and has turned her frontline experience in advising into a powerful dissertation that uplifts marginal voices and critiques outdated advising structures. For 3 decades, serving in a variety of roles, Dr. Zendejas has flourished as an equity-minded, student-centered professional at UC Santa Cruz. Since May 2020, she has had the privilege of serving as a project director with the HSI initiatives, where she is engaged in several grant initiatives and leads the implementation and management of a Title V Part A grant. Previously, she led a Title III STEM grant. In her role, she gets to work on campus-wide innovative interventions with multiple stakeholders to ensure that the campus, as an HSI, is serving its students. She earned a BA in Ethnic Studies from UC San Diego, her MA in Higher Education Administration from Teachers College, and most recently, her doctorate in Educational Leadership from UC Davis. Again, please add all praise in the chat and remain muted until the Q&A portion of today's talk. And today's talk is advising equity, understanding the advising praxes central to student success at a 4-year Hispanic-Serving Research Institution. Higher education scholars increasingly recognize academic advising as a critical strategy for supporting the persistence of systemically marginalized students. Since the 1990s, UC Santa Cruz has experienced significant growth and demographic shifts, prompting a need to rethink student success within a more racially and socioeconomically diverse campus context. Undergraduate enrollment increased from 10,269 in 1999 to 17,517 in 2019, while the proportion of underrepresented groups rose from 16.2 to 30.4%, and white students declined from 55.2 to 31.1. During the same period, first-generation enrollment grew from 9.2% to 35.1%, and Hispanic enrollment increased from 12.9 to 26.1%. These changes have created both challenges and opportunities for advancing equitable student outcomes. Dr. Zendejas' interview-based qualitative study examines how UC Santa Cruz's decentralized, dual shared advising model shapes advisors' ability to provide holistic, culturally responsive advising. In this HSI Equity Talk, Dr. Zendejas will discuss how advising structures, practices, and policies impact advisors' capacity to to support students, and how the current model can function as a structural barrier to advisor collaboration. Centering advisors' own perspectives, this study elevates advising praxis that they identify as essential to student success, persistence, and retention. And with that, I'm going to let Dr. Zendejas take it away.
Thank you so much, Angel, for that introduction. I really appreciate your really very kind words, and I know they were off the cuff. Excited to be here, and it's so interesting that, yes, I'm a data person because even in my introduction, there's numbers. So don't worry, I'm going to show them on the screen too. I'm going to try to keep the talk till about 40 minutes, and I'll be very honest. I don't know that I've talked for 40 minutes straight, and so that's not something I'm used to. So I might have to take a break or two here and there to just drink some water. But thank you all for joining. I'm super excited to share. And let me see if I can advance my slides now. Okay, so here's my presentation outline. I'm going to give a little bit more about who I am. I'm also going to share about who is UC Santa Cruz. I'll then review kind of what my problem statement was for the dissertation, the theoretical frameworks and the methods that I used in the study. I will go over a bit of the participant demographics, and then I'll share my 2 research questions that were really the foundation. And then the summary of results, really by themes and sub-themes. And they're very complex, and as you'll see by the theoretical frameworks, it's very understandable that they're that complex. And then I'll have some time for questions at the end, and dialogue more than anything. So who is Lydia Iyeczohua? The first picture on the top left, I wanted to put a picture to honor my family. I come from a farm worker family. I grew up in Hollister, California. And, it was embedded in me to go to college. I don't know who started talking about it. I don't know if it was one of my tios or my tias or my mom, but definitely it was something that they saw as that they wanted me to do. So in the bottom left is a picture of my family, and I have a very strong matriarchal family. So my grandmother, who's still alive, and my mother are there in the middle, and then my daughter to my side, and my sister, and like the other family members. But family is very strong, and this is just the immediate nucleus, right? There's a whole other extended family that's not even shown. Going back up to the top right is a picture of students, and this is when I worked at Baskin Engineering, and I was directing the MACE engineering program, and we had a summer bridge program. And I really love this picture because I feel like it told, I love the background, first of all, first year experience. And then actually one of the students that's on that panel to this day, she's in touch with me, and she's like, I want to go to medical school. And I'm like, wow. So it's really great to stay in touch with the students that I've worked with over the years and just know their successes. And that's really kind of what I'm about. I really want any student that I work with to be able to meet their potential. And then last, as many of you know, I'm an Aztec dancer. It is a really, really strong part of my life. That's what I do on the weekends. People who might be out, Super Bowl parties or doing, what do you call it? Different kinds of things on the weekends, going, singing in a choir, doing plays. Well, I'm the one who's out there dancing in the sun and getting a lot of my sun, and then dancing with the feathers. So I just thought I'd share that. So who is UC Santa Cruz? UC Santa Cruz, as we know, has been around for 65 years. And the foundation is really built on the pursuit of social and environmental justice. And so when I was doing some research on the institution, I thought, wow, that's really, I knew about Angela Davis and the work that she's done, but I didn't know about Bell Hooks, and Bell Hooks being an alumnus from the institution. And so I just felt like, wow, if we think about the foundation of the institution, really it's all about social and environmental justice. And so how do we stay true to that? And I really thought that how we look at advising on our campus is one way we can do that and live up to that. Okay, so I talk about this huge student demographic shift over 2 decades. I like to talk about the 1990s because that's when I went to college. And actually, because I'm from Hollister, UC Santa Cruz was a campus I had visited, and I was not interested in coming to Santa Cruz. Why? Because I was scared. I was like, it's dark up there. I'm gonna get lost in the woods. Like it was just not my cup of tea, even though I'm from country. So in 1999, the percentage of Latinos on the campus was about 13%. And I remember when I went to UC San Diego, the percentage of Latinos in 1990 was about 9%, so even less at UC San Diego. But at UC Santa Cruz, 13% in 1999. Underrepresented groups includes all the other demographics, so African American, Native American, Pacific Islander, and help me out here. I'm sure there's something else, but that Latinos are included in that percentage as well. First generation were 9%. So I thought this was really interesting. I was like, wow, 9% is not a lot. And then whites you have at 55%. So fast forward 20 years, in 2019, the Hispanic Latino population shifted to 25%. That's a 12% increase. Underrepresented groups increased to 30%, another 14% increase. First generation college went up to 35%. That is a really, really big shift. And then you have whites, which obviously have to decrease, and they went down to 31%. And so essentially the way that I was thinking about this is when you have this type of demographic shift, it really merits a new approach to advising. Can't keep doing business the same way. So the first framework that I used for the dissertation is the multi-contextual model for diverse learning environments by Hurtado, Alvarez, Guillermo Juan, Cuellar, and Ayerano from 2012. So what I like about this model and why I think it's extremely applicable is that it centers students' multiple identities and draws on social identity theory. It also, in looking at it, it's very complex, right? So it really truly demonstrates the complex ecological structure of the educational institution, from social historical context, policy, institutional context, and then the climate for diversity, and you get really kind of in the weeds of it all there. And then you have community context and external commitments on the bottom, right? So you really think about all that. The other thing I like about this model is it also emphasizes that the identity of the faculty and staff matter. So when we're thinking about the identity of the students, absolutely important. But the identity of those who support the students is equally as important. The second framework that I used is the Culturally Engaging Campus Environments, or CESI, by Museos in 2014. Now, if we think about it, there's four main constructs, and I think you can see my arrow, yes. Okay, so the first one is external influences, okay? That's family, finances, employment. The second is pre-college inputs. That's anything that, happened while they were in, before they got to the institution. Then you have your culturally engaging campus environments, and that's kind of broken down into two more areas. Your individual influences, sense of belonging, academic dispositions, and academic performance, and then ultimately your outcomes, learning, development, satisfaction, persistence, and ultimately degree completion. So what I focused on within the SASE model was really around the culturally engaging campus environment and cultural responsiveness. So the humanized environment, proactive philosophies, and holistic support. So really in this study, I'm focusing on holistic advising. So I know a lot of times we talk about these two terms, maybe proactive and holistic, somewhat interchangeably, and you can. They have some of the same elements. The difference between them, and intrusive is another one that I would probably use as well. Proactive is where you're actually doing things more proactively. You're not waiting for the student to come to you. You kind of have something that's on a schedule based on the academic calendar. Holistic is where you're addressing the whole need of the student. And then you have intrusive, which is very similar to proactive, but it's really kind of, again, if I have to be brutally honest, kind of in your face with the students, right? Like when you email them and they don't email you back, you're still persistent, like you'll text them, you'll call them, and they're not used to getting phone calls these days. I think that's really interesting. So when they get a phone call, they're kind of surprised. So essentially, humanized environment, the proactive philosophies, and then holistic support, specifically within holistic advising, is where I'm focusing kind of the framework. So again, what is holistic advising? If I had to really think about it, and I used Museos and Ravello to kind of reinforce this definition or the principles, is that it's student-centered, it is humanized, really taking into account what a student might be going through and their experience while they're here. It's adopting a multifaceted approach. And what I mean by that is because really when students come to advisors, they may start talking about their academics. And as the conversation goes on, they will learn that it has more to do than what academics. So it's about addressing everything beyond academic needs. And not to say that we need to do that or advisors need to do that, but it's really about understanding the multiple resources that are on the campus that students can then take advantage of. And then holistic advising really utilizes some form of proactive and or intrusive strategies. Okay, my methods. So I used an interview-based qualitative research design. Essentially, I knew going into starting my program in 2021, I knew that I wanted to do something qualitative because I wanted to understand the more kind of rich, robust experiences of students. And I thought originally I was going to interview students, but in my conversations with my faculty committee and my main advisor, they really pushed me to think differently. And so then I thought to myself, well, then why not interview the advisors that are actually supporting the students? So then I decided to go that approach. I interviewed participants that met specific criteria. So they had to be someone who was of color and or first generation college themselves. And I wanted them to have at least 1.5 years of advising experience on the campus. And the reason being for those things is, again, because when we're thinking about the frameworks that I just discussed, I wanted an advisor, a participant who had some level of experience to talk about and support students regarding the multiple policies that our students are navigating and the advisors are supporting them with. I used thematic analysis for all the data. Okay, so who were the participants? I kind of broke it out by 3 areas. So gender, we had roughly 4 males and 3 females. I didn't have anybody else that identified any other way. The same with participants of color. I had 5 of them that were of color and 2 that were not. And then first generation college, 5 that were first generation and 2 that were not. So essentially, I had a total, as I shared, 7 participants. My research questions. The first one is, how does the campus advising structure impact the experiences of advisors in providing holistic advising to undergraduate students at a 4-year Hispanic-Serving Research Institution? The second question is, what advising praxis do advisors perceive as central to undergraduate student success at a 4-year Hispanic-Serving Research Institution? So as some of you in the room or on the Zoom call who maybe have gone through a PhD program, research questions can really shift. Mine shifted somewhat, but I really want to hone in on the fact that I wanted to emphasize I felt really privileged that I could do my study here at UCSC, and I was able to utilize kind of what was what was available to me. And the fact that it's a Hispanic-Serving Research Institution is really important to hone out, and that's why you'll see it on the research question. Okay, so summary of findings, and I have organized them by themes and sub-themes. So again, I bring back a part of the SESI framework. And so honing in on humanized environments, proactive philosophies, and holistic support. So the three main themes that came out of my interviews were being able to really conceptualize the role that academic advisors play, pulling out the institutional context. And then the other piece was understanding that advisors really serve as first responders. So when conceptualizing the role of academic advisors, the three sub-themes were understanding advisors' advising philosophies, understanding advisors' intersectional identities, and the professional development that was available to the advisors. So we'll go to the first one. So the first one of conceptualizing the role, advising philosophies, we're thinking about what is the educational background of the advisor? What is that? What kind of access to professional development did the advisor have? And then what shapes the advising philosophy of an advisor, right? So things like collaborating with other offices and staff were important to the participants. They talked a lot about creating a safe space. And I was really impressed to see how much many of the participants are actually using holistic advising strategies without necessarily having been trained in it. So creating a safe space is kind of one example, right? Fostering trust and meaningful conversations by being transparent and vulnerable, being student-centered. The other piece as well that informs the advising philosophy of the advisor is to recognize the student's values, goals, and principles. And the other thing that I really appreciated hearing was being able to lean into uncomfortable conversations. I'm just going to check in real quick, Angel. Do we got anything that maybe, are they just comments or do we have any questions?
We've got some great comments coming in. Yeah, holistic advising exclamation point. I've never thought of us as first responders, but it makes a lot of sense based on my own experience from Jessica Paramoya. No questions yet, Dr. Zendejas.
Thank you, Jessica, for sharing. So this is one participant quote. I like to think I'm student-centered. UCSC college advising is very student-centered and very much about the student experience. So hearing from the actual participant themselves that they felt that their office is student-centered was really very affirming to hear. And so I appreciated that. So then we're going to go on to the advisor's intersectional identities. And obviously I did not do my animation correctly. I wanted the things on the left to go first and then the quote. Okay, so don't look at the quote, okay? Participants' experiences and identities contribute to team dynamics and practices. So again, when we think about who we are and we bring our full authentic selves, right? Like there's how do you separate part of who you are to what you do in your work? Sometimes you can do it and sometimes you can't. And so really the identities of the participants contributed to their team dynamics and their identity as either a first-generation college graduate and or a person of color. The other piece that is important in understanding the intersectional identities of the advisors is that they can mirror the students that they serve, and it serves as a source of validation and belonging for them. So I'm going to read the quote. When they said you should apply anyways, that motivated me to actually apply to four-year institutions and do more than what I thought I was capable of. It always goes back to thinking about where I came from and where I am now. It took a community of people to make that happen. Okay. Professional development is the other area that kind of stood out and came out. So it came up many times that around the advising certificate program. So kudos to UCSC for offering the advising certificate program. I know to this day it is still being offered, but it definitely came up as something important and helped to inform how advisors operate and informing their philosophy. They also found the monthly training sessions very, very helpful, especially when they were offered by other offices like STARS, which is a students transfer and reentry resilient scholars, services for transfer, reentry, and resilient scholars. Yes. Or education opportunity programs. So definitely hearing that like from the participants was really key. Again, I want to emphasize back to the participants. These were college and major advisors. I did not have any participants that were advisors from any other type of office. So no EOP, no STARS, nothing like that. Okay. So one challenge that they saw as well as doing professional development that had come up is if you're going to go to a conference, that means you're not going to be in the office and you're not going to be available to students, right? And so it's like this kind of push and pull. And I thought that was a really interesting observation that was shared. And it's unfortunate, right? And the fact that that you have to kind of make decisions like that, like, well, if I go, it has to really depend on the timing of the year and maybe when students aren't always really going to need to see an advisor. So I'm going to share a quote. When they said you should apply anyways. Oh, is this the same quote? Sorry. I had another quote that I don't have at my ready, but you get to hear it again. When they said you should apply anyways, that motivated me to actually apply to four-year institutions and do more than what I thought I was capable of. Always goes back to thinking about where I came from and where I am now. It took a community of people to make that happen. I guess I really like that quote. That's why it's in there twice. Okay, so now we're going to move on to institutional context. So here you see like a circle, and I have what we have on our campus at what I call a decentralized advising structure. Decentralized in the sense we have college advisors and we have major advisors, right? And then these are the four kind of main areas that advisors are working and supporting students with. There's university and academic policies. There's non-academic policies. There's major exploration and qualification. And then there's academic standing. So all those different types of policies are kind of the main things that came out from the participants that students were seeking them to get advice. So let's break it down a little bit. I like to use this image here of the dual shared advising model at UCSC. So if you're thinking of the residential college advisors, really they're focused on major exploration, general education requirements, policy navigation, and then you have the major and minor departments advisors that are focused on major declaration, course plans, and major policy navigation. And then somewhere in the middle, you might have either one of those advisors talking to the students about graduation, degree progress, and university requirements. If we wanted to even take it a little bit further, which I didn't include in here, the role of faculty advisors, right? There are some departments where faculty advisors are really, really engaged, but it's not across the board. But they're not official advisors, they're more kind of unofficial. So when you think about this dual shared advising model, it can be challenging. And so what I want to share in the next slides is the type of impact that that has. So again, university and academic policies, non-academic policies, and the decentralized advising structure. The type of impacts that came out from the study is that the participants shared that advising is not being utilized as much as students should. They felt that there were many factors that contributed to the inability for students to explore majors. This idea of major exploration just seemed like it's just not possible, especially for a student coming in, not just the transfer students, because usually transfer students have to kind of already be on the ball and like they can't really change their majors. But incoming first-year students, even having time for major exploration, given all the other requirements they have to take, is not always possible. Realizing that financial aid policies really intersect with academic advising, because there's so many students that, come up with issues that impact what's going on with them, financially. And then there's like a push and pull as well. And there's that, it's just hard to kind of really dissect every single, financial impact that might have with academics. They don't work in isolation. They really are working together. And the other thing that I learned is that this decentralized advising structure can contribute to misinformation or wrong information given by the advisors. And so therefore, then you have students they'll have a college advisor tell them one thing, and then they'll have a major advisor tell them another thing. And so that can be very confusing for students. And so where do they go for their source? Okay, so then the last theme was advisors as first responders. And really, because of the fact that students have so much hidden curriculum, and again, thinking back to the percentage of students that are first generation, the parents didn't go to college, so they can't really rely on their parents. Maybe they have an older sibling that went to college, but being able to understand all the hidden curriculum of what does it mean to go to college, what's a section, and when do I do this, and do I have to go to class and whatnot, and I don't have my mom to wake me up to go to class, that kind of thing, right? So this hidden curriculum is really important. The other piece is that our students are getting an abundance of information when they first start. And so hearing things multiple times isn't necessarily a bad thing, because you just never know what sticks at the beginning. And so sometimes it's natural to have to kind of restate some of the policies, remind students about some of the things. And then the other piece is knowing that, and again, hearing it from the participants, that students have to navigate the institution, but systemically marginalized students can be more challenged than non-systemically marginalized students. And this is why programs and offices like STARS and EOP and even HSI initiatives, learning support services, those are all really key to systemically marginalized students. The other piece that I found and I really appreciated about advisors as first responders is they really found job satisfaction in the work that they did. They really, really enjoy their work, and they found it as a true source of satisfaction. And here is a new quote. They're separated from their families, from their structures, and that's any first-year experience. But this is a full experience for the next 4 years, where these students are completely isolated and learning and going through these transitions. And so, of course, they need someone to run to when something happens, when they are going through a huge mental health crisis and they need support. They're going to run to us first. We are the front line, defense and support systems. So this is really interesting. So there's some articles out there around the notion of advisors serving as first responders, but for it to have actually come up directly from a participant, I was just like, wow, this is truly happening. Okay, y'all hanging in there? I love, Ebony, that you have your camera on and I can see your thumbs up and all that. Great. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. So what are the implications for practice? I think it's really important to understand that there should be some kind of re-envisioning of the dual shared advising campus advising structure, right? And I know that's actually probably started. It's been spearheaded with the transformational work group. So I'm happy to hear about that. The other piece that I think is important is I heard from the participants is they want to be engaged in the training and professional development. So they don't want it just done to them. They really want to be engaged in what kind of training they are going to receive. And then the other piece is if there's any opportunity to really mitigate major exploration for our first year students. What is, where is there an opportunity where we could work with students, especially those who are coming undeclared? And I know a lot of times they're not allowed to, they have to have like some kind of at least general area that they want to study, but really like, what are the opportunities to support major exploration for them? And then the other biggest implication, which I'm sure many of you have heard, is the student to advisor ratios. They're just too high. And what can we do about that? The implications for policy and future research. The academic standing policy. So just real quick, the academic standing policy has to do with the student making sure they're meeting, getting a 2.0 GPA from every term and passing a certain number of units every quarter and at the end of every year, especially if they're on financial aid. So if students don't meet this academic standing criteria quarter by quarter, then they will be put either on academic probation, or I think it's called now academic notice, and or subject to disqualification, which means that they have to leave the institution. So really being able to support students so that there's less of them that are either on academic notice or subject to disqualification. And then the other implication that I saw is that really this notion of race neutrality has truly had an impact on our policy. It's something that started long ago and that we see it, and it comes down from whether it's state policy or federal policy, but having to mute race has been a detriment. And so wondering if there's an opportunity where we can find a balance, and being able to honor, the policies while at the same time really honoring the students that we're serving. And then obviously there's the current state of state and federal leadership, right? Who's the governor, who's, the governor obviously has to approve the state budget, which then has implications for us at the University of California because we are a public institution. And then as we have all been experienced, especially with the defunding of HSI grants in September 2025, the federal leadership had really had an impact on what we're doing now. And I did create this word cloud just for this. So as you see, advising, collaboration, the transactional versus the developmental advising is really that comes up, and then intersectionality. That's it for me, everyone. I hope that you all kind of were able to absorb. I don't know if I went a little too fast. But again, like I wanted to leave enough time so that we could address questions and really hopefully have some meaningful conversation amongst us. So thank you so much for listening, and the floor's open.
Excellent. And Dr. Zendejas, we do have 3 questions in the chat, so I'll be asking them in the order that they were received. The first question that we have is from Cinnamon Danube, who says, I do have a question. What questions did you ask the advisors? You're sharing the themes and what you've heard, but I'm curious what the questions were. And sorry if they missed this.
That's okay. So I don't have the questions right in front of me, but I do remember, I remember most of them. So I asked a lot of questions about their background, why they got into advising, what they thought was important about advising, the type of professional development support that they received or not. I asked them about what is it that students were coming to see them about. And so having to essentially code all that data and the different topics that they would address. That's what I can remember off the top of my head, Cinnamon, but I am happy to share my protocol with you if you're, and I could probably pull it up if I stop sharing screen in a second too.
Excellent. And